I'm going to get Amin Al-Hassan here in a little bit to discuss what I think is a fascinating change in sports media culture. Paul Pierce and Gilbert Arenas giving voice to something that offends an always classy and should offend an always classy Luol Deng, and what gets rewarded in the modern age because no one's going to listen to the always classy Luol Deng show. Paul Pierce and Gilbert Arenas are being rewarded for being the trolls that they are. But the thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about here, does anyone in the room remember why it is that Jerry Krause's widow was booed here recently? We've gotten a refresher course of the last 30 years of sports. Ultimate winner guy, who's not Tom Brady, Michael Jordan, ultimate winner guy, won so much that the last 30 years have been dominated by him and the guy trying to succeed him in sports coverage. Do you guys remember why Jerry Krause's widow was booed, the specifics of it?
Yeah, they showed Jerry Krause on the video board at a Bulls game and then cut to his wife right after he was up on the Jumbotron, and so fans were booing, and it was a terrible look for everyone involved.
Because he broke up the Bulls team, right?
Well, it's not just because he broke up the Bulls team, because that's part of it, of course. But the thing that sticks to Jerry Krause so much that his widow is booed after his death is that in breaking up the team, he spat, organizations win championships. And Michael Jordan's like, nah, I win championships. LeBron and Pat Riley, nah, I win championships. Belichick and Brady, nah, I win championships. And the reason I want to bring up organizations winning championships is because ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports, setting the table for all media coverage for the masses, is the organization. And they are telling you now, loudly, that all of the parts are disposable. Around the horn, an era is ending at ESPN. 20 years of whatever it is you thought journalism was. Around the horn, we gave so many voices. Where Pablo started, where Mina started, where Bomani started. The era is ending. Tony Reali, over 20 years, Eric Rideholm and the producers of Pardon the Interruption, they made Around the Horn, they made Highly Questionable. This group of people outside of ESPN took, in 20 years, the credibility of newspapers and ended newspaper sports sections because they wanted behind them in newsrooms sports writers that said, Chicago Tribune, Denver Post, we're a global organization. We're a coast-to-coast organization. We do journalism. They killed the newspaper sports section. The New York Times was the only organization that sat out, hey, the columnists can't go give their opinions over there. We're not sharing our credibility with a news-gathering outfit that doesn't have to be a news-gathering outfit. What is getting rewarded in the modern age is Gilbert Arenas, is Paul Pierce, is Pat McAfee, is Shannon Sharp, is a new era of how some of this stuff is going to end up happening in the future. And I wanted to ask the group, when you hear reports from the New York Post that Around the Horn is ending, when I know what those shows were for some of you, I know that for some of you, Highly Questionable was your after-school viewing. It sort of indoctrinated you in the earliest stages of whatever it is your sports fandom was into that's what sports television should or shouldn't be. The 90-minute segment from 4:30 to 6 p.m. before SportsCenter. SportsCenter used to be the biggest thing, and then PTI became the biggest thing. Pardon the Interruption's going to be the last thing standing there because those two old journalists will hang it up however they want to at the end because they've got relationships at the top of the food chain. But what I heard Shannon Sharp say the other day that I thought was so interesting. He's got a couple of popular shows. He works his ass off. He's super single and just married to the work. He wants to compete in his 50s the way that he did as a Hall of Fame player. He goes in on Monday and Tuesdays to do First Take, and this is what he said. I don't talk to any producers. I talked to 4 people at ESPN. He named the 4. One of them was Iger. Pitaro, and he's like, You can't, because there are all sorts of reports coming out now that there's tension on First Take. And he's like, none of that's coming from me because I don't talk to anybody. I go sit in a box. I put on my suit. I talk into a camera. I'm there 2 days a week. And I talk to 4 people, Pitaro, Iger, and 2 other top level executives. He does not get on any calls. Around the Horn was a bunch of journalists getting on calls all day so that they could be maximum informed on whatever the subject matter of the day is. But if you've got a personality like Shannon Sharpe, you don't have to do it that way. He's prepared. He knows what he's doing. He doesn't need to talk to any of the producers at ESPN. But that's a seismic shift for somebody to be coming in on their big show Monday and Tuesdays and being able to do whatever he wants. And I'm just curious, as I present all of this to you from the innards of the business, do you care if anyone leaves ESPN? Any single person leaves ESPN. Does it matter to you?
I think Stephen A. Smith is the last star. To me, he's the face of the network and the one guy that if he left, you would go, whoa, this is the end of an era.
I think, too, that block of programming you talked about, Dan, that 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock 90-minute window or whatever, you look at Reali, who's been there, 20 years. I was 12, 11 years old watching Tony Reali as the stat boy intern for Tony and for Mike, and then all of a sudden getting his own show. That hurts when you tell me Around the Horn's ending, and I know Tony Reali personally, right? We all do. He's part of, our family at ESPN. Oh, come on. Don't do that. It hurts because it's he's so good at that job, right? He is so excellent at that. And the fact that they're you're kind of done. It's over. And it's he could do this for another 40 years.
The thing about these shows ending in the capacity in which they are is that, like you mentioned before, Dan, they're eliminating sort of the team element of any of this. They're eliminating these jobs for producers who are the people who build up talent to be informed. When you're talking about Around the Horn, and I interned there at one point. It was doing some of the behind-the-scenes work that helped to prepare all of these journalists for the job. Yep, I was waiting for that. But I was part of creating the research packets and going together and pulling real information for people to not look like Stugotz, who's not paying attention to the games, but to look informed as if they can actually pay attention to all of these different things. But the reason it worked is because you had people who studied these games. You had journalists with real credibility who knew how to storytell, who were then there on TV. And when you're eliminating this sort of collaborative environment and you're just propping up individuals who know it's only about entertainment, that's it. It's no longer about actually fleshing out stories. It's just about entertaining the masses. It changes all of what this has all been about for the last couple decades.
Yeah, Around the Horn, I used to watch it every day after school. I'm friends with Mina Kimes. I'm friends with Kevin Clark. I'm friends with Harry Lyles. I'm friends with Izzy Gutierrez. I would be devastated to see these people not on my TV every day at 5 p.m.
I don't believe that when you and Greg Cody talk about heartbreak here or what would be the reaction to anybody leaving, you say the reaction, Stephen A. leaves, your reaction would be, wow, and then you'd go right back to watching ESPN. You'd watch First Take as much as you already do or don't.
Right.
It's not actually the bet that they're making on giant stars, but we'll pay you this much. Stephen A. will pay you not as much as McAfee. You will not have a production staff. You will have better numbers than McAfee, but you will not have the $10 million in resources that allows you to, have Belichick and who else is on the show? Aaron Rodgers weekly and Nick Saban. What he's fighting for, production. Let's partner on stuff. I want to partner with you the way McAfee has partnered with you, the way Shannon Sharpe has partnered with you. When Tim Legler can be as excellent as he is and can quietly leave, and you sort of have a little bit of a death of expertise as Kendrick Perkins gets rewarded because it's a different thing than what it is that Legler does. You have a dilution by degrees of your expertise and your commentary, but it doesn't matter enough. It's a dilution of degrees that I care about, but the viewer and the audience doesn't care so much. It's obvious that it's very clear that ESPN can lose anybody and all it'll be is noisy for a little while. But the noise won't matter because organizations win championships.
That's accurate. And we see that in sports all the time. You know, there's no Michael Jordan anymore. The Chicago Bulls are still selling out games. And I think the change and evolution, in a way, ESPN is just catching up to that wave. I mean, think about it. MTV starts off showing nothing but music videos. MTV's a whole different thing now. You can't even find a music video. Food Network started off doing cooking shows. Emeril Lagasse's teaching me how to make chicken piccata. Now, Food Network is game shows and competition shows.
And they're great.
Yeah.
And they're great. So ESPN, if you're an ESPN fan, and I think Stephen A. Smith is maybe an exception, but you're going to watch ESPN. You're not going to switch channels because Tim Legler is no longer there or a certain show. Pardon the interruption, I think, is a tentpole for ESPN. Obviously, that's the one show I will miss when it ends for sure.
This is part of the corroding of actual information all across television, right? Like CNN ultimately decided we want to be first take about a decade ago, and that was right leading into the first Trump election, because they realized as a corporate entity we're going to get more eyeballs and advertisers if we just have people watching this polarizing thing rather than actually doing the journalism and breaking it down and giving you correct information. And that goes for Fox, and that goes for MSNBC, that goes for any of these major cable networks. So when you turn around and you look at ESPN, it shouldn't necessarily be a shock that in something in sports that's even less news-based, what of it really matters in news a lot of the time, outside of the types of stories that were on outside the lines and things like that, you're going to have, of course, a decrease in people like Tim Legler breaking down the game when, you can go to a podcast like The Dunker Spot with Nikias Duncan and Steve Jones,
or
you can go to Oddball, or you can go
Greg Cody show,
or you can go to guys on Twitter who are breaking down the game in threads.
Brady
you
Hawk.
can get it there rather than on TV, and they'll just go, all right, we're going to overwork these individual talents who are polarizing, who are going to give us stuff on social media, and call it a day.
It's an interesting fracturing because if you want to be informed and get expertise, you can do so. But it stands out when Orlovsky and NFL Live are giving it to you on a mainstream outlet. It stands out when on the MLB network, all you're getting everywhere is legitimate expertise that if someone's not an expert, they will be unmasked very quickly if they do not know what they're talking about, because the fandom is so intelligent and desires that the content be smarter, better, different than other places than they get it. I would say that the content has to respect its fan base that way, but I would also say ESPN is respecting its fan base that way. It wants entertainment. It doesn't want the expertise of Orlovsky and NFL Live is good over there and stands out. It's not what they want from the rest of the shows. They want the rest of the shows to be more general.
The elimination of Baseball Tonight was really what kind of ended modern baseball coverage at ESPN. And we've always talked about how baseball fans are dorks. They follow the stats, everything like that. Well, when they then moved over to MLB Network, it became immediately, the moment Baseball Tonight was gone and we all had to go to MLB Network for more baseball coverage, it was leaning in to, we will cover the analytics. And that's the reason why baseball fans are so much more focused on sabermetrics and analytics than any other fandom, because the only place that they're able to go for content told them this is how front offices are breaking it down, how they're analyzing it. And so you, the fan, should be informed this way. We're over where ESPN is talking about it. They're not really caring about the information. They're just talking to you about, hey, Shohei Ohtani, is he Babe Ruth? I don't know.
Well, compare it to cooking and music shows then. Compare it to the evolution that Greg Cody is talking about of MTV becoming ridiculousness at all times. Because when it comes to when I think about things that people care about super passionately, cooking, music, and sports are all among them. But only one of them can actually put out multiple networks a day talking about a single thing. Like, you don't have multiple music networks that are 24 hours, 7 days a week. Cooking does some of that, but ESPN and Fox and all of these other entities are occupying a space where they are giving maximum stuff to the people most passionate about sports. Compare it to the cooking and the music entities in terms of how it is that these things are digested and delivered. Do cooking shows give you expertise? They do, about cooking. Music is not giving you very much expertise about music, correct?
Right. They're not analyzing songs. They're just presenting.
They're not breaking. It's not Jack White talking about guitar chords in a way that will make people fired up, right? Like, sports occupies a unique space in inundating market passions, flogging market passions with excess, correct? There are more podcasts in this sphere. Hell, Boston alone can support about 5 major sports podcasts. Just the people who show up at the parade for the Celtics.
And Stu still can't watch the Subway series. Jesus Christ.
I wanted to have a conversation with you guys about what happened and has happened most recently with the disappearance of Max Kellerman. Max Kellerman, who has vanished as the sports media debate ecosystem has shaken enough that Zaslow pointed at his television up here earlier and just said, "that guy," when pointing at Skip Bayless and watching, the 50,000 people left of whatever that following is. Right before football season, Skip Bayless is going to be gone. Max Kellerman, at the center of those wars, was collateral damage on something. And if you were watching what was happening with us at ESPN, they tried to kill Max Kellerman after we left by giving him the morning sports radio show. And the reason I bring you into this, Zaslow, is because I believe ESPN's strategy of figuring out that most people are disposable, including, they're saying, Stephen A. Smith, when Burt Magnus talks about, well, we'll go on without Stephen A. Smith publicly. You are the beneficiary of what it is has changed at ESPN, where they've realized they can get a person who is a professional radio host, and they don't have to give the Max Kellermans of the world the morning radio slot. Max Kellerman was a prodigy in this business. Max Kellerman is exhibit A on how you have to be careful about how disposable the pieces can be, because before Around the Horn, he hosted IMAX on ESPN. Before PTI, he hosted IMAX. And the way he got replaced was, "I'm more valuable than this." And they said, "No, you're not." Tony Reale was an intern on Pardon the Interruption. They went physically down a hallway, got the guy who happened to be there, and he's hosted that show for 20 years since.
Yeah,
because
he hosted Around the Horn. He said IMAX, which is where he went to when he went on Fox Sports Net.
Yeah.
Forgive me. Yes, you're correct. That the original incarnation of Around the Horn was with Max Kellerman as host. He thought he was more valuable than that. He was a prodigy. He was a prodigy in sports television and sports radio.
Greatest orator since Martin Luther King, right?
According to him, yes. And he has, I will tell this story. I don't think you guys know this story either.
I can give you an answer on what's happened to him, by the way.
I have an answer, and
Yeah.
I know what's happened to him because it's what they tried to do to us. I don't believe when we were negotiating at the end with ESPN over our intellectual property, I don't believe they know that the amount of value that they were giving us in those negotiations. When I was in those negotiations, I was coming to realize, they don't know that these feeds are this valuable. But the most scared I was during those negotiations was when they were suggesting doing to us what they did do to Max Kellerman, which is just, we'll pay you for the end of the contract. You can get the money and not have to work, but we're going to put you on the shelf for 18 months. And then you can see after the pandemic how all of that goes as you try to reinvent it after 18 months. That's a long time. Kellerman, after being on everything ESPN was doing, Kellerman has disappeared. Kellerman, a friend. Kellerman, whose talents I value, and I don't know how many people have noticed.
Well, they're hoping not many, because that's the whole intention behind that stuff. It's also depending on. I don't think Max is like this, but depending on the character of the individual, sweet, amazing. I don't have to really do anything. And
No, Max is like that. Max,
Yeah.
because they were trying to kill him, Max is relieved from not having to avoid being killed anymore.
Yeah,
because
there
the
were-
schedule he was keeping 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. and then a show at 2 p.m. as well on television, impossible.
Yeah, there are worse situations to have than being paid like the entirety of your contract for the term and just being asked not to work.
Has something happened recently with Kellerman where you said I found out what has happened to him recently?
I only
Is there
found
something
out.
recent
I
that
only
happened?
found out because Dan was like wondering aloud, and I saw a clip that he should be reemerging soon because the term is about to lapse.
Gotcha.
And I was just sort of throwing in front of the audience the idea of here was a person, unquestionably a star at ESPN. Unquestionably, I would say a star since he was like 15 or 16 years old on New York Access Television doing boxing expertise. Somebody who had sophisticated knowledge on a variety of different subjects, and how quickly someone of even that name value in a changing industry can be replaced. And the reason I bring it up to you, Zaslow, is because I believe what ESPN has done in general with radio, while trying to profit off of the remaining embers that there are in this economy, is find a person who is a professional radio host, and you don't have to go pay the person. You don't even have to make them an employee. Just make them a contract, appearance-based person and do it in a way that is maximum professional, but you don't need name value. We will roll through here people who are good radio hosts.
I think I've gotten lucky in that regard. I've been with ESPN Radio for almost a year now, and I think what's going on now is probably different than what was going on before, where and I started doing stuff with them when they changed the lineups in the most recent lineup. It feels like they hired radio people all across their day part, all across their lineup.
I'm a fan of what they're doing because
It's radio people now, and that's where I've been able to fit in because, like, I'm a radio person, and I got my shtick, but I feel like I've been doing it long enough now that everyone's kind of in on the joke. But I don't know if I'd have been able to do what I'm doing right now with ESPN Radio if it was 2 years ago. I feel like it's in a really good place where I have gotten lucky with the time.
Yeah, and I'm going to try to be careful to navigate this because you do work on ESPN, but ever since they went on that licensing deal, when we were at ESPN, we stuck out, I think, in large part due to them realizing with Mike and Mike, we can put two talents together that we're not really sure where they fit in. Let's put them on radio and magic will happen. Well, those guys were unique. Those guys were ultra talented and they had a really good chemistry. What they got away from was usually you have proving grounds locally and then you get the network gig and you have refined your chemistry through years and years. What it became all too often, and many of our friends were stuck in this situation, is, all right, well, you have this new talent deal over at ESPN. There's some language there about audio. We'll figure out what to do. And they'll just pair strangers together all too often, and they have to work out the chemistry, and that takes a really long time. Remember about the first year of our show, Dan? Like, if we were in a high-pressure situation on an ESPN radio marquee, I don't know if our show survives if they just put you in a room with another talent and say, hey, figure this out, and you were ultra-talented.
Given, I would not describe myself that way. Given,
you're one of the goats when it comes to audio, dude. Don't sell yourself short.
Given, this is where it is that I think some of these things are interchangeable. The thing that we have that is unusual is an audience stickiness that I don't believe will go where Bayless goes, for example. The allegiances that you need, the intimacy that makes sports radio something that is different, you have to be careful with that, even when you're Colin Cowherd, somebody who's got allegiances, because you need the allegiances to be so strong that you feel like you know this person and you're spending 3 hours a day with them. And if they're replaced by someone else, you don't want someone else.